Perfect. Well, I am set up online now, so we're good there, so people can see me online. So hello to anybody joining us on the computer today. I have a student in class with me today, so we'll get started in just a moment. But today's class presentation will be on drone basics. I'm going to stand out of the way. All right. So my name's Saxon. I teach the class here. This is going to be the last drone basics class that we teach. Starting next month, we're combining drones with a bunch of other cameras. And basically what we're going to be doing in June is we're going to change drone basics and we're going to turn it into a camera beyond traditional cameras. So we're going to get more into specialty cameras that aren't necessarily a point-and-shoot camera, mirrorless, or DSLR. So we'll talk about drones, GoPros, action cameras, all sorts of different stuff. And we're going to start doing that on the 4th Thursday of every month, the last Thursday of every month, starting in June. So today's our last drone basics class that we'll be teaching. But to get you guys through it, so as always, anybody who's watching online, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as you're going. For anybody in class today, feel free to stop me at any time and ask questions. So, there we go. I just want to make sure that's set. Awesome. Not what I wanted. Okay, there we go. So, you bought a drone and you don't know what to do. Welcome to the class. So, to start, where to go when all else fails. I put this on almost every single class that I have. First thing you should always do is read your owner manual before. Make sure you familiarize yourself with everything. Read up on the product. You know, a lot of the times, most of these owner's manuals don't come with a lot of information anymore. But sometimes there is information on the owner's manual that can be pretty valuable. So I definitely would recommend reading it, making sure you familiarize yourself with the text and the literature first, and then you can move on. YouTube is also great. I tell people left and right all the time that YouTube, for the most part, will have everything on there that you're looking for. I had to fix a pipe that was leaking in my house. I watched a YouTube video. I was able to figure it out in about 20 minutes. It's amazing what you can find on YouTube. If you just know how to type things into the search bar, you can find videos on your drone, on all drones. Even this class, if you wanted to, you can find on YouTube. And then Masterclass is a nice option too. I'm getting ready to take that one off the list, but a lot of people were using Masterclass during the pandemic. It was kind of a way for experts in the fields that they were experts in to talk about and show you how to use and do whatever it is that you're trying to do to get your feet off the ground, whether that be writing, you know, acting, gardening, and even cameras and filmmaking and pictures. So where do your pictures go? And make sure you have two. So first things first, when you're taking pictures on your camera, camera or GoPro or action cam, or in this case a drone, you're going to go to an SD card, and you want to make sure you have two of them. The reason you want that is just in case that anything goes wrong with the card. Let's say that you're taking videos and pictures and you look at the playback and it's not saving. If you only have one SD card and you're stuck on filming or pictures, you might not be able to then get what you need done for the shoot for that day, or you might not be able to photograph or film what you want to film. So if you have two SD cards on you, it's nice to have a backup just in case one doesn't work. You've got options.
Question.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether the SD card for the drone goes in the drone itself or does it go in the controller?
It can go in either one. It can go in either one. It depends on the model that you have. The drone itself will save the video to the SD card if it's inside the drone. If you don't have that, then it'll save the video on the controller in the SD card. The difference, though, is if you're saving it from the drone, it's saving it without transmitting it to the SD card. So it's a better quality video if you're saving it in the drone. If you're saving it in the controller, you'll have easier access to it or more immediate access, but because of the transmission signal between the drone and the controller, you can sometimes lose the quality. So I would recommend putting the SD card in the drone if that's the option that you have available.
It, on the DJI, is it the mini card or the regular card?
Depends on the model still, but
Okay.
it should be the mini.
Okay.
Should be the
Another
mini.
question. What about the speed?
Speed matters with video. It depends on the quality of the physical video that you're shooting in. If your drone is only shooting in HD or in a standard definition, I would tell you a slower card would be just fine. But when it comes to video, the faster megabytes that you can get for the read and write speed, the better. It'll help transmit the video faster, it'll help record the video faster, and by doing that, it keeps it at a consistently better quality the whole time. So the faster the card as far as video goes, the better the end result will be for the video. The higher a quality and the faster of speed that it can read and write the video on the card.
Okay.
I like to use this quote in almost all my classes, but I think it's important to remember this, that the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. I love getting a good deal when I can get a good deal, but at the end of the day, when it comes to cameras, the more money that you put in and invest into your photography and into your equipment, the better your results will be at the end. Photography is one of those things where you can be very good, you can have a great eye for photos, you can know framing, you could be good at video editing, but if you don't have the gear to get you the picture that you want, you're not going to have the result that you want. So with the cameras, find a good deal, but when there's a time for you to put a little bit more money into something to get a better end result, I always will strongly recommend doing that. So your pictures should not live on your memory card. The idea of the memory card is that it's presenting you a temporary house to store your photos or videos before moving them over to another source. So for example, when you're using the SD card in the drone is recording, but then you're removing the SD card and putting that into the computer, and then that is where you're able to then play with your videos, edit, delete, move things together, or save. If we let them live on the memory card, we're adding to the fact that there's a possibility or a chance we could lose all those photos or videos more easily. SD cards are very fragile. They're made out of a very thin material of plastic, metal, and various other components. And they have a really good flexibility to them, but they are fragile enough that if you move them in the slightly wrong way, you could ruin the connection area, you could snap the SD card, or you could damage it enough where whatever files are on there, you're no longer able to ever get them again. So it's important that we move the photos from the SD card to other locations. And the process that we go through with that is as I show. So to not lose your photos or damage your card, the first thing that you want to do is land the drone. Turn off the unit. Feels pretty self-explanatory, but I did have a customer one time who tried to take the drone out of the air. They had it low enough, they tried to grab it. Never do that. Always land the drone first and turn it off. Once you turn the drone off, wait a few seconds. I like to say wait at least 5. Let the drone cool down, let everything turn off, and let the drone's video footage save properly. It might have already saved, it might be done doing its read and write, but you always want to make sure that you give it proper time so that way it can do all of those last minute things. Then you can remove the card. It's important to remove the card and not use your camera to send the pictures or your drone to send the videos or pictures, and the only reason I say that is because you want to remove as many points of contact as possible. You want it so that way the SD card is the only thing connected to the camera, the SD card is the only thing connected with your computer. Therefore, there's less things that could go wrong. I always use the 2 stories that I have of the dog and the spilled water. So if you have your computer connected and you've got your camera hooked up via cable and you're transferring everything, if you spill water and you damage the camera, there's a possibility that not only will you damage the camera, you'll damage the SD card, and then any of those photos that you're transferring onto the computer could be lost completely. So you could lose your photos because you have too many things on your table at once while you're trying to transfer your photos. The other thing I always like to mention is the dog. Let's say you've got the camera on the table, you've got everything plugged in, dog's walking and his tail is wagging, it hits the camera and it unplugs the camera from the computer while it's transferring. It might not damage the camera, but it could delete all of your photos in the process of it transferring from the camera to the computer. So I always recommend that taking your card out and placing it into a card reader might seem like an extra step or an extra thing to purchase, but in the long run you are preventing any accidents from happening by taking that one extra step. So I do recommend a card reader to prevent yourself from losing photos if you have a bad transfer. These are ideas of card readers. Typically you'll see them made by all sorts of different brands: ProMaster, Sony, Nikon, Canon, SanDisk, Lexar. All of these companies make card readers. The beauty of a card reader is that for the most part it'll handle both your standard SD and a micro SD. Now when you get into some of these fancier camera models, they'll take what's called a CF Express card. CF Express cards don't really matter for drones. You don't see most consumer level drones having a CF Express. Higher end models would, but for the lower end models, they basically have their standard SD and that's all they need to function. Now you've plugged your SD card into your card reader, you're ready to go. What's your next step? So the first thing you want to do is copy them to a destination folder. Typically what I'll do on the desktop of my computer is I'll create a new folder and I'll label it whatever the date I took photos, or maybe the event I was taking photos, so I mentally remember what it is that's inside that folder. From then I'm going to copy, I'm not going to move, but copy the photos from one area to the other. And the reason I say to copy them is because you want to make duplicates because you want a paper trail. You want to be able to have your photos in one section as you're transferring them to another section, so that way you know that you're not losing anything along the way. The worst thing that could happen is that you go to move something, it doesn't move properly, and you've already deleted everything off the SD card, and now you've moved them to another spot and they're not showing up. So again, what we're trying to do is minimize the chances of us losing our images, losing our videos, even though we're doing a lot of extra steps in order to get there. Use Explorer or Finder. So Explorer is for Windows, Finder is for Mac. That'll help you locate the photos, the documents, depending on how you have your computer set up. And then copy, not move, photos to a second place. Now I recommend using either an external drive, Prime Photos, or Google Drive. Those are three of my favorite examples. You definitely should not have them only on the computer. And the only reason I say that is because if anything happens to your computer and you lose everything on there, there's really no way of recovering that or getting it back. Having an external drive full of photos or videos is great. Having Prime Photos where you can put everything onto the cloud, that's also great. Google does a service with that as well too. All are good options because they present a different way for you to store your photos that not only live in a physical place like your laptop, but now they live in more of a portable place or maybe a non-physical place like in Prime or Google. They're safer. Now before everything, we want to eject the card before physically removing it, format the card in the camera, and then we don't want to erase it in the reader, we want to format the card. Now the reason I say that is because by formatting the card in the camera, it's automatically going to delete everything that was already on the camera. So if you go out and you shoot, you take pictures of birds, or you take pictures of plants and bugs, or maybe your kids are having a soccer game of some sort and you want to bring your camera out, when you're done taking your photos and videos and you transfer it over to your computer, rather than sitting there and dragging everything to the trash can on the computer, eject the card properly. So eject before physically removing it, place it back into the device, whether that be a camera or a drone, and then from there you can format inside the camera and that will erase all the information on the physical reader, or on the physical card. These are your different backup plans. So again, it starts at the SD card and moves over to the laptop. Once you get it onto the computer, you then have a couple different options. You can move it to a hard drive, which is one of my personal favorites, or you can look at a cloud-based computing. Both are options. I like the hard drive because it's a physical, tangible item. It's there, and you can always access it. I keep one inside of the safe at my house, and I keep one of them on my desk. If my house ever burnt down or anything bad happened, I at least have my photos safely on a drive, and I have access to them at any time. Cloud-based solution, though, is great too. If you're comfortable on the computer, you know your passwords and your usernames for something like Google or for Prime or for even Microsoft, all are good options. So you have options as far as storing, but I definitely recommend to think about what your backup plan is so you're never in a situation where you could possibly lose your photos or your videos. Options for cloud-based storage, I always like to show a couple. So Google Photos is one that I talked about. I mentioned Microsoft and their OneDrive. Adobe is another good one too, because Adobe gives you access to not only their cloud-based solution for storing photos, they give you access to their photo editors and their video editors. So with Adobe Creative Cloud, you can now also edit on Premiere Pro, and you're able to put videos together and clip things down and trim. You get a lot now more creativity and more flexibility with something like the Adobe Creative Cloud. Now, we've talked about saving the videos, we talked about what to do with the SD card so that way you're set, ready to go, because if you fly without putting anything in there, you really can't save any videos. Now let's do a tour of your drone to get an idea of the buttons. Now, with all of drones, all products, all electronics, they come out with stuff constantly new. So the picture of the controller that I'm using is a standard controller that you'll see with most entry levels. Once you get fancier, you can get into the full RC controllers. You can even get into controllers that you hand build yourself and wire and do all the work with that give you the control and the flexibility of where buttons go. However, to save you from all of that, I've given just the standard controller that you're going to see with almost every single drone. Now, before I do that, there are different types of drones. The drone that you're going to see the most of in most consumer levels is the quadcopter. The quadcopter has 4 blades, quad standing for 4, and then copter being a rotating blade that sits on top of an axis. That is what we're looking at here. And these are all different versions of quadcopters. All are very similar, all do a different function of some sort, or they all have different features that one doesn't have over the other. Things to look at. So in the drone world, there's different types. To start, there's a single rotor. You'll see that at more specialty stores and RC copter stores. Those aren't necessarily for filming video, but it looks like a helicopter. So you can fly it around, it's more for fun. The quadcopter is then the one that you'll see the most of. They're the most popular style of drone sold on a consumer level. And there's 2 main styles. There's an FPV drone, which requires goggles to fly, but typically only comes as a quadcopter. By wearing the goggles, you see the view of the camera, or of the drone, in the first person. By doing that, you're able to put yourself in the driver's seat a little bit more. There's tricks that you can do with it. They look really cool. So if you're someone who's not trying to make good video, or you're not trying to make movie quality video, an FPV drone might be more for you because it's more for the person who wants to just have fun. A Cinedrone is a quadcopter, but it has a high quality camera and a tracking feature involved. So for people who are trying to make movies or become cinematographers, a Cinedrone would be a good option because it gives you the ability to have the flight, to be able to fly around and move, but now you get a high quality camera on the front of that drone. Hexacopter is a 6-bladed copter, and it's great for filming and stability in the air. For most movie professionals and for most movie businesses, back in the day they would have helicopters that would fly, and they would have the camera on the helicopter, and they were able to shoot cinematic scenes of a plane flying through downtown Chicago, or chase scenes that seemed really preposterous. They were able to do that. Nowadays, they just use drones to do that kind of thing, because a drone can carry the same camera, and with a 6-bladed copter, it can carry a 400-pound camera if it needed to. So hexacopters are also very popular for the reason of they can carry a lot of weight and film with the best stability. Now the problem with a hexacopter is that you're only going to see that on a more commercial level. So that would be something that you see movie productions use, or the bigger budget films. They need something that can carry the larger camera and film for a prolonged period of time at the quality that they need. Fixed wing rotors are the next one, so that's more of a plane experience. Again, similar to single rotor, where you have something that's like a helicopter. There's not cameras on a fixed wing rotor, but it's great for people who want less of a copter experience and they want to feel like they're controlling an airplane. Most controls will have the same controls, but all will differ. So for the most part, these are going to be the buttons that you see the most on your physical drone, or on the controller. So the first thing you'll see are the control sticks. Those are the knobs that stick out from the camera or from the controller. Each stick will have a different customizable setting, but one stick will control your up and down movement, as well as the rotation of the drone, so which side it rotates to, whether left or right. The other will have control over the side-to-side movement and the front and backwards movement. So one controller you'll be able to tell right away, and it's usually your left-hand stick. The left-hand stick will go up and down, or it'll spin the camera in one way or the other. The right stick will bring the drone forward, backward, and side to side. The antennas on the drone, you point them outwards every time you turn the drone on, and these are the connection point between the drone and the controller. Some higher-end models don't have antennas, nor do they need them, but most models that you see will have some form of antenna, whether that's built into the controller or on the front. The gimbal dial is on usually the left or the right side of the controller. It's usually a spinnable, rotatable dial that you'll see. When you rotate the dial, it'll either move the camera up or down, it'll change the f-stop on the camera, or it will even give you control over the shutter or refocus while you're filming or shooting. So there's a lot of things that the gimbal dial can do. The record button, by clicking this, it'll take or record a picture for you. Usually there's a way for you to switch between the record button and the photo button. Then you have focus and shutter. This will give you the focus, this will give you a refocus on what you're filming or shooting, and it'll give you control over the shutter. So it's very similar to the gimbal dial, but it's another dial that controls a various amount of other functions. So there's two different dials. And then there's the RTH button that you'll see on most drones. The RTH button's return to home, gives you the ability to send the drone back to the place it took off from. Do not use if you're on a moving object. I've had a few customers who've had drones, they've flown them, they get on their boat, they want to bring it back to the boat that they're standing on. The drone is going to go back to where it took off from. So if you took off from the middle of the water, it's going to go back to the middle of the water and try to land on your boat, which isn't there anymore, so it will land in the water. So if that's the case, I would recommend you bring it as close to you as possible and land it by you without hitting the return to home. Here's a layout of what the controllers will look like. So for the most part, you'll see the antennas on the top. They stick out from the physical controller. You'll see your gimbal dial. That'll be on the left side or the right side, depending. From there, the return to home button, the power button, both your left and your right stick button will be on there. And then you'll have some other buttons too, and features, as well as a mobile device clamp, depending on the controller that you have. You might also have a USB port, so you can actually charge your phone while it's part of this controller. Now, some controllers will be the RC controllers, so they will have a screen built in. You do not need your phone then to fly. The only reason you would want to have a phone or an electronic device with you is to connect to the internet. Because one of the really nice features about the drones is that they connect to the internet while you're flying, giving you an up-to-date map so that way you're never breaking any laws. So the one downside to having the drones is that given the restrictions and some of the boundaries that our federal government has set up, we have to be very careful when we're flying next to airports, next to government buildings or next to other things that they mark or deem to be sensitive. DJI has a little map that while you're flying will actually tell you right away whether or not you can go into that area or if it's okay or not to continue going forward. They'll give you notifications on the screen calling out warnings, different class warnings based on where you're at. Some can be as simple as just warning you that you can't go higher than 150 meters. Some will be more specific and say you can't go more than 20 feet into this area, you have to turn around. Other ones won't tell you anything. They'll just basically say that there's a warning going on in your zone, and that's all they'll tell you. You've got to look up then what the code is and everything else. But most of these drones have sophisticated systems where they won't prevent you from really breaking the law or breaking any rules. However, it still is possible if you try. So be careful while you're flying with these. I don't say that to scare anybody, but I do recommend do research on your area. It's not your local government that gets involved with the drones. It's only on a federal level. So technically, your local government can't come after you for any of the drone stuff. Only the federal government can.
But you have to be connected to a cell tower for that. I mean,
you do, and that's only if you're connecting with if you have your phone or a tablet of some sort, you will need some form of connection with it.
yeah, well, this would not work.
No, not unless you had Wi-Fi. You technically don't need it. So I was flying on Tuesday, and I was in the desert in Arizona, and while I was flying, I didn't really have any internet connection, but it let me fly. Previously, though, I had looked up for that area what the rules were, so I already knew not to go above a certain height. I knew not to go past a certain point, so I had prepared myself coming into that. So other drone information, we talked a little bit about this right now. So geofencing. Geofencing is a virtual wall. The drone will not allow you to push forward or fly in this area. Typically, the fencing exists by airports, government buildings, national parks, and certain cities and properties. The idea with this is that the government and certain collectives have put together kind of where you can and can't go with the drones to prevent any injury from happening, to keep you safe, to keep the animals safe, to keep buildings safe. It's all a part of it. So it's important that you know where you're flying and keep an eye on that so that way you're not breaking any laws or any regulations. Now, you can use on most of these drones a Pro or a phone controller. Now, the drone will require some form of screen to be used. That's the one downside to flying a drone, is that you will need a screen of some sort. That can be from your phone, that can be from your controller, but you will need one. For example, one of the controllers that you can get with your drone will not come with a screen, but it allows you to snap your phone in place on the bottom or top of the drone. That's one of the items that you'll see. Other Pro controllers will have a screen built in, and they will show you everything on that screen as you're recording. So RC controllers, while more expensive, usually $200 to $300 more, they'll offer you more because they give you that screen. Now, what do you see while you're flying on screen? There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of pieces of information, and for most people that can be a little confusing. So the first thing that you should notice on there is at the very bottom of your screen, you're going to notice that the distance from you and the drone. There should be both a altitude for the drone and distance. Altitude should be marked by H, that's the height. That'll tell you exactly how high the drone is in the air. For most places, most drones, they can get pretty high. Most of the entry levels will probably get you to about 300 to 200 feet at the most. Some can get you a couple thousand feet in the air too, depending. Again, all very dependent on what you're flying and what the zoning area that you're flying in is as far as restrictions go. But you have access to seeing both of those on the screen. On the screen, you also have the ability to switch between photo and video. I like this feature, but I tend to use it more on the controller itself just because it's more intuitive for how I use it. But you do have the ability to switch between taking photo or shooting video on your drone as you're flying via two buttons, both on the top of the controller and on the screen. Earlier I mentioned that you get the map on the screen too, and that is the map with the geofencing. So technically while you're flying, bottom left corner, it should be showing you an active map that explains where you're at and what to keep an eye out for. Are you in a Class B zone? Should you be using caution? Can you fly here at all? The one thing I will say is that if the drone doesn't connect to Wi-Fi, it will let you keep pushing the drone as far as you want, and that's where it can get a little tricky, because if it keeps doing that, you run into the possibility of it going so far that, number one, it can't return to home, but then number two, you also get yourself stuck in an area where you're not supposed to be flying the drone, and that can then get you somebody coming to your house with a badge, either trying to give you a fine or take you to jail, depending on the severity of the drone usage. This little neighbor boy who lives, I think, kitty corner from us, about 5 or 6 houses down, he was flying his drone. We live right by O'Hare. He got too close to O'Hare, and I don't think it really stopped him. So about 45 minutes later, we heard sirens, and there were 3 O'Hare squad cars in front of our house, O'Hare Security and Police. And they knew that the drone had took off from us, went all the way to O'Hare, and came back. They found out it was a kid, so they let him go, but the neighbors did tell us that they have to be careful with it now, because they did get too close to O'Hare when they weren't supposed to. So it is a possibility that even with the Wi-Fi, or it's a possibility that without the Wi-Fi and the internet, you can go a little further, but there are repercussions if you do, so be careful while you're flying. Use the geofencing if possible. Active Track is a feature on some of the more pro model drones, and it's a really nice feature because it gives you the ability to circle in and select the subject matter you want to capture and get. So let's say that I'm riding my bike, I want to record myself riding my bike, but I want to use my drone to do it. I, in theory, can circle myself on my drone and I can start riding my bike. The drone will hover above me and film and follow the whole time. The only time it'll stop is if it loses track of me during the process. So if I go in between buildings or I cut out and it goes above a tree, it won't be able to pick me up anymore. So it's important that we keep an eye on that. Underneath that we have Return to Home. That's the RTH button. Pretty self-explanatory. If you click the button, it'll bring the drone back to where it took off from and land. Immediate land means that wherever the drone is at, when you press immediate land, it'll slowly start to descend and then immediately land wherever you decide to send it. Let's say you're done flying, you can't see the drone, it's somewhere else, you want to click immediate land, it'll make sure that nothing's underneath it and it'll land safely, and then you can go pick it up later. Now, understanding permits in the FAA. So the Federal Aviation Association is who controls our sky here in America. Within that control, there's not a lot that they're looking for besides weight. Weight class is a big part of how the aircrafts get identified nowadays. Because you do have both consumer level planes, you have fighter planes, you have cargo planes, you have drones, you have these consumer level drones, you have helicopters, you have biplanes, you have a lot of different pieces and areas within the FAA that they're monitoring, and one of them is the drones category specifically. When you're going to purchase any type of permit, if you have a drone that is under 249 grams, you do not need any kind of permit unless you are doing commercial work for business or for money. So for example, let's say that you want to start making videos to put onto YouTube. You just want to have fun, take some videos of a vacation, you want to edit it together and then put it onto YouTube. You bought a brand new Mavic Mini 3 Pro, one of the top of the line smaller drones you can get. It's under 249 grams. So if that's the case, you technically don't need to have a permit. You don't need any special licensing. And because you're not doing any of this work for a business where you're collecting a paycheck off of it, technically you can do as much of it as you want and then put it wherever you want it to go. If that is not the case, and let's say for the first part that you are above weight, well then you will need to register your drone. And that can be accessed on the FAA.gov website. It only costs $5 to do so and includes a course and information that you need to read. After completion, you're going to clearly write out the permit number that you received on the drone. This will allow, if you have a higher end drone model that has a heavier duty camera or maybe better battery life, now you don't need a permit in order to fly those drones. Now let's say that, you will need a permit to fly those drones if you are above 249, and you'll need to write that permit number on the drone once you get it. Part 107 is different. Let's say on the other side of that drone, you want to do commercial work. You want to make money selling drone footage for TV or for ads. Now you'll need a Part 107. You pay $175. You take a course on flying, safety of flying, and how to make sure that you're doing it responsibly to not get anyone hurt. After completion, you can now do commercial or business work with your drone. So once you get that Part 107, you pay the fee and you take the class, you now have the ability to legally take video footage and work of whatever it is that you're doing with your drone, and then use it to make money and profit off of that. Now, this is really where we get towards the end. There's not too much with the drones, part of the reason why we're combining it with other things. Basics to drone footage. So once you get in the air, I always recommend, once you've learned the basics for taking off and landing, practice. Go outside, make sure you're in a nice open field, practice going up as high as you can, drop it down, go as low as you can, go side to side, go as fast forward, as fast backwards. Keep playing with the controls and shooting until you feel comfortable enough that you understand what it is you're trying to do with this camera, with this drone. Because the hard part with it, I equate this to hockey. When you're playing hockey, you have to be good at both using the stick and you got to be good on your feet. You got to know how to skate, otherwise you'll slip, otherwise you can't hold the puck. With drones, it's very similar. One aspect is flying, the other aspect is recording. So if you're good at recording, but you're not good at flying, you might be able to take a really nice video, but you don't know how to line it up and get it right. If you're really good at flying, you might not be really good at recording. So with the two, it's important that we're doing both at the same time. So we've talked about the basics of flying, now the basics for footage for filming. So with the drone, the active track feature is really popular, and it gives the person the ability to track their subject matter while filming. So here we have either ultimate frisbee or some soccer, and we can see that a blue box appears along our white t-shirt gentleman. As our gentleman moves, that box follows him, and presumably the drone would then follow him as well too. This would give a cool aerial effect where you're recording, you're getting the information for what it is you're trying to record, but now you're able to track the subject matter to get an even more personalized or better quality video. I had a gentleman who was riding his motorcycle through California, and he was getting to a point where they were going to go to Lakeshore Drive. Takes you along the ocean side, and you literally drive around the coast, and it's a beautiful sunset. Everything is gorgeous in the movies. He bought a drone from me to specifically use this feature. He wanted to circle himself while he was on the motorcycle, drive the motorcycle, hit record. The drone would record him while he's driving, and all he's got to do is go forward. So it was a way for him to record safely without having to take his eyes off the road and without having to disturb traffic, but he was able to get high quality video stylized the way that he wanted to. So it was a feature that he was using specifically from a drone that he purchased. Active track objects, this is another one. So in the same vein as this guy where you're using active track, here's another version of it. In this case, we have the car that's going along the mountain front. We can see that the car is moving and the drone is following it the entire time. And not only is the drone following it, but the car is in movement and so is the drone. So another thing to be looking at is what can you do to actively track so that way you take more things off your own plate. You're letting the drone and the controller do the work. Now you're focusing on the eye or the vision or the story, whatever it is that you're doing designed to a lighter plastic, so if it snaps, it should immediately help the drone start to go down slowly without it crashing from the sky. Now it does depend. If you're flying that drone really fast or you're doing other things that could put the drone in much more danger, if you crash, it will most likely come tumbling at a very fast speed to the ground. But if you're going slow, you're recording, you hit a wire, you hit a tree branch, and you're only maybe, let's say, 100 feet in the air, the drone should naturally or slowly start to come down to land itself without it trying to crash into the floor. So extra propellers are nice because if you do need to replace the propellers, it's a very easy screw to undo, and then you put the propeller back on and screw it back into place. Not hard to do. A charging hub for those extra batteries is great. Extra propellers, store all of that in the bag with the extra batteries too. Have your memory cards, have extra just in case one doesn't work. A lens cleaning kit is not necessary, but I almost think everyone should have one. I do the Chicago Polar Plunge every year. I work it, I volunteer, and I take the photos for it. One of the things that I constantly struggle with is the fact that about every 15 seconds I have to take a rag and wipe off my lens. Now, it goes a long way because after I wipe off my lens, my photos look awesome. But I have people jumping in the water in January. I'm getting splashed with really cold water. If it's below freezing, my camera will get water droplets and then that'll freeze on the lens. So I have to take a rag and wipe that away. Having a lens cleaning kit of some sort, not just using your t-shirt or your sweater to wipe your lenses or your cameras, is really important. It can damage over time if you're using rough surfaces or even non-microfiber surfaces. So using special cloths that are designed for the lenses can go a long way for preserving and keeping things taken care of. Get your external hard drive. That's a good thing to have to store your photos and your videos. Various filters. Your drones are flying high in the air. They're getting sunlight on them. If they catch a weird ray of light, they're not going to produce a good video. So getting neutral density filters, getting polarized filters, getting standard UV filters, those are good things to put on your drone so that way it helps the video quality. And then classes and workshops. Go out, practice flying the drone. Go to a park district where there's not a lot of trees. Go somewhere where you're in an open space and you can make mistakes. If you accidentally go forward instead of backward, you don't accidentally ram into a brick wall. Be in an open space so you can experiment and try different things before you take it into an area with a lot of trees or a lot of mountains or hills, stuff where now you're putting your drone at risk. It's always better to start on flat land than to start in the fun places. And that's all I got for you guys. So my beginning camera class is going to be next month. So it starts on the first Thursday of next month. So it is 5/25. So January 1st, to start the month off, we will have our first beginner camera class. And then from now on, guys, it'll be 4 camera classes a month. The first Thursday we do beginner. Second Thursday we do intermediate. Third Thursday we'll have advanced cameras. And then now from now on, this class, the last Thursday of the month, will now be beyond traditional cameras. So we're going to talk more on not only drones, but we're going to talk about GoPros, action cameras, 360 cameras, even some camcorder information too that people might be wanting. But anything that's not a traditional camera, what you need to understand and know about that to then incorporate that with your other cameras. Yeah, that's my class.
All right.
Anybody online who has questions, feel free to comment or ask. I'm going to check in with my students now in person and see where we're at there. What kind of questions do you have for me, if any?
Well, I bought this device here recently.
Yeah, the gimbal.
Yeah, the gimbal.
Yeah.
And my question, if you are willing to answer a question about the gimbal,
Yeah, what you got?
is it was set up here with a large lens that I had on my it's not a video camera, it's a call those cameras?
Mirrorless.
Huh?
Mirrorless.
Mirrorless.
Mirrorless,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Now, putting a different lens on it
Yeah.
requires a combination of using this and that
Yes.
to change something.
Mhm.
Um, that would be my question as to how you do it.
Yeah.
Although, maybe, let me see if that's all listed in this user manual for the DJ.
Well, funny enough, it's actually listed in the app. So here, if you want to open the app up real quick.
How do I get to the app?
So if you swipe up from the very bottom of the screen here, now you're out. Now you can find the DJI app on your tablet. Maybe it's on the next page. You can swipe.
Wait a minute, would it be here, or
It
what?
would be on another page, so swipe to the left. There you go. And what you're looking for is the DJI app. So these are your app pages. You have various pages where you've got different apps downloaded on each of the pages.
Let's find that DJI.
It should be right there. The
Oh,
room.
oh, okay,
So click on it.
okay.
Now, it's going to do this every time. You don't get another option with it. It is a bummer. But
It is a bummer.
what is nice about it is that you can pull it open like this, and at the very bottom here, there is a balance test. By clicking that, there are 3 different tests that we have. 4, technically. The first thing it's going to have you do is mount your camera.
Yeah, right.
And if you want to see how to do that, on the right corner, click that. You give it a tap. When you're on Wi-Fi and you have an internet connection, it'll play a video for you. So here, let me
Okay.
show you.
I see. I see.
DJI did this so that way so that way if you ever got confused on how to reset it up, you're always able to figure it out. So let's go back to our
Yeah.
page here. Now give it a click.
Um,
Mount camera.
okay. Oh,
And here it is.
okay. I see.
We can turn the volume up. And then if we click play, right at the bottom there,
Uh-huh.
and there it goes.
Mount the upper quick release plate to the camera. Toggle the lever on the camera mounting
Actually, turn
plate to the
this
unlock
to
position.
The
Insert the
video
lower quick
goes.
release
Now you saw the
and toggle the lever to the lock
Yeah.
position. Toggle the lever on the lower quick release plate to the unlock position. Insert the upper plate and toggle the lever to the lock position after it is engaged.
So that's just a quick one to mount it. And let's say you didn't get that and you need to do it again. You can just go right to the bottom there, and then in a second, it'll let you replay it. So it'll do the little circle with the arrow, click again, and
Okay.
there's the video again.
Okay.
Now,
Mount the
the next thing that they do is the tilt. So actually, I can just show you on this, because all 3 are right here. So the mounting plate goes on the top here.
Right.
Okay? Now you have tilt. Tilt is going to be this right here. This spinning contraption there. So if we click on the tilt mount, hit play, it'll show us how to set that.
Unlock the tilt axis lock. Rotate the tilt axis so that the camera lens is pointing upward. Check to make sure the camera is not top or bottom heavy. Loosen the mounting plate knob to adjust the center of gravity. Tighten the mounting plate knob while holding the camera upward so the gimbal does not bear the weight of the camera. The vertical tilt is balanced when the camera is steady while pointing upward. Rotate the tilt axis so the camera is pointing forward. Check to make sure the camera is not front or back heavy. Toggle the lever on the mounting plate to the unlock position and adjust the center of gravity. Toggle the lever to the lock position. The tilt axis is balanced when the camera is steady while tilted up or down by 45 degrees. Lock the tilt axis.
So
Yeah.
when you're doing it, you put the camera on there, and you want to have it where the lens is pointing up like this. What you're doing is then you're pulling this up, and here you have a locking mechanism right there. You undo the lock, and you're able to adjust based on the camera's weight. So until you have it where while you're playing with this, the camera stays perfectly upwards with the lens facing the ceiling, then you lock it into place, and then that part's done. Now, there's a slide plate that goes in between here. That's where the camera gets mounted onto.
Right.
You'll do the same thing right here, and then that's where you lock it into place with this. That will then basically make it so that the camera can tilt. So if the camera's sitting like this, it can either tilt or raise to a certain degree depending on what you want it to be.
Okay.
Now, the next thing, go ahead.
So. Yeah, roll balance.
Roll, that's this one right here, so we can unlock that. And they're going to explain that one for us too.
Unlock the roll axis. Check to make sure the camera is not front or back heavy. Toggle the roll axis lever to the unlock position and adjust the center of gravity. Toggle the lever on the roll arm to the locked position.
So this
The
will
roll
tell me
axis is
everything,
balanced
I
so
just
the
have
camera
to
is steady
study
at
it.
any angle.
Exactly. So,
Lock the roll axis.
perfect. So what he's saying there is once you get it set, here's your lever for that one. This is then going to set the center of gravity on the camera. See how that's moving? Once you have it set, you'll lock it into place, and you'll know it's set when the camera doesn't move. When, let's say, the camera's here. Let me unlock these so you get an idea. So this is what your camera would look like. It's right here.
Uh-huh.
When you're able to rotate and the camera doesn't move and it stays like this, and when you rotate and the camera stays just like this, that's how you know it's set. Just like how he showed in the video.
I see, okay. Well, I brought my camera, but I'm not gonna put you through this, you've shown me how to
Yeah.
study.
Yeah. That's the easiest one. You don't have to necessarily study. What I would probably recommend is every time you're about to set and go through with this, just watch these videos. That'll help, and then eventually it'll become second nature.
Right.
Once you turn it on, you hit the test button. So once this is all turned on, you can actually do a balance test. So when you connect the camera, on the top there, it'll then offer you to do a balance test. So after you've done everything here, you can then click test, and it'll tell you if everything's good.
I see. Okay, that's what I have to do. You're right about this being a bummer.
I know. Well, it's because, and if I'm being honest, most people will use this app with their phone. And because with people, when they're holding their phone, they'll all hold it like this. So that's why this only reads like that. Technically, this app was designed for your cell phone,
Yeah,
but you can still use it on the tablet. That's the only downside.
yeah.
The other thing you can make, let's see, if we turn it like this,
Oh, yes.
it doesn't really give you, it doesn't hold. So there's not
Well,
really.
there's another one here. There's another,
Yeah, that's to do it so then you can lock it like this. So you can do two different views. If you're sitting at it at a higher desk, then you can set it like this so that way you're a better eye view.
well, what
If
I'm
it's
saying is you can. You can, boy, this is, oh, yeah. Put it like that. Although, yeah,
it kind of goes.
that won't work, I guess.
No, it doesn't, because yeah, it's hanging off the lens up there. It's not
Right,
really
exactly,
balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wouldn't do it just that way you don't
Right.
damage your nice iPad. But yeah, that's the only hard part with this is that it'll just take some time to get used to that balance test. Because if the camera isn't balanced properly, then the gimbal won't do its primary function of stabilizing.
Right, well, I've never used it yet, or I've never played with it yet, so it's a matter of time.
Yeah, when you're ready. And I'm here, so anytime you want, just come on in with it. I remember I sold you this guy. I'll show you every single time how to set it up whenever you need it.
Okay, well, the guy that worked with me before, looks a lot like you. What's his name?
That is me.
Huh?
Saxon.
That was you,
That's me.
Saxon.
I had a big beard.
You are Saxon.
I am Saxon. I just had a larger beard before I got rid of it.
Say
I had a
again?
beard. I shaved it off.
Well, you may have had a beard on when I bought that.
I believe I did, yes. I think that's why. Yeah, that's
So you're Saxon.
I am Saxon. Don't worry.
There's another guy that looks a lot like you.
There's a couple guys. We're
Oh.
similar. We're similar.
So you're Saxon.
Yes, I am.
All right. This is such a wonderful
Isn't
thing.
it great?
It's got such detail.
You can see everything.
I have a it's not DJI, it's another three-letter word, JVC. I have a JVC camera that's about this big. It costs, $3.5 grand, I think.
Yeah.
And it has a great 20, I think it's a 20 zoom lens, the 20, what do they call it? At any rate, it had, the thing is sharp as a tack, and when I'm adding video into this and then look at it, it's amazingly clear.
Yeah.
Amazingly
No, that's awesome. That's what you want.
It
Yeah.
isn't quite what the TV stations can do, but it's close.
I know. It's amazing, and it's a small portable device. You can take it anywhere that you want with it, and for the most part, you can really do anything you want with that. It is a lot. And for photo editing and for looking at photos, it's gorgeous how it renders color and graphics.
Right.
So it's great for photo.
So far, I've not done anything with sound with that camera.
Yeah.
It takes time to study and learn,
The elements.
although I do have a microphone that's a, what do we call that?
Shotgun mic?
Pardon me?
Shotgun mic?
Shotgun mic.
Yeah. You have all, I mean, that's great because you can use the shotgun mic and you can use it with this too, which is even better. When you put that on, because you're adding more weight, now you're balancing again and you're changing it. But you can add the microphone onto the camera while you're recording. You can do all that stuff.
Oh, I was thinking of the shotgun mark in terms of the
JVC.
video camera, but
Yeah.
the video camera is too heavy for that.
Yeah, it would be.
Video camera is 8 pounds.
Yeah.
So this is the wrong device for that.
Well, you have that Fujifilm camera.
Yeah,
You can put the shotgun mic on there too.
you can.
Yeah. I can show you that anytime.
All right. Okay, Sax.
All right, Jerry. Let me help you wrap all this up. Any other questions for me?
Well, I'll think on them on my way home.
Well, I'm here. I'll always help anytime. Let me grab your coat for you. Sorry it's a little colder today. I was hoping it would be nicer.
Uh-huh.
We're getting there, though.
That's right. We're getting there, all
I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody on the online class. Everybody, thank you for joining tonight. Have a great night. Be safe. If you guys need me, my email, phone number are on the screen. Feel free to call me or to email me anytime. We also take text too, so text me, call me, or email me, whatever is most convenient for you. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, keep taking pictures, and I'll see you guys next week for camp.